go over the bridge, have your phones out, have them ready. You're about to take an awesome video. I'll tell you when to take it so you can save your battery. But yeah, so Dusaba was indeed the very first non-native resident here in Chicago, and he was the first resident basically because not even the indigenous folks would chill out here, especially in the summertime when all the floods and all the crops would rot and reek and damp into the air. All of this was just swampy and marshy area, right? And in the summertime, there was this one crop that would just create this foul odor that would make you say, ugh. You know, you would react and you would be like, ugh, Chicago강, you know? Ugh, it's that Chicago강. And that's what we now use to identify as a smelly onion. Centuries later, we now use Chicago강 as Chicago. So now you know where the term comes from, smelly onion. Go ahead and take a video of this. I'm gonna take a quick drink of water, and we'll start the tour. Isn't that cool? Like, I never get tired of this office view. This is probably one of the coolest views I've ever had in my life. Just this view. So we'll begin our tour with this building on your left, this beautiful blue wavy building known as the St. Regis, built in 2020. This is the third tallest skyscraper here in Chicago, but more importantly, it is the #1 tallest building designed and built by a woman, Jeannie Gang. Here, you see what Jeannie Gang's lifestyle. Now on your left, you're gonna see this building with a bunch of hashtags on it. That is the Leo Burnett building, built in 1989. This is a great love letter to the first school of Chicago architecture with adding modern aesthetics. Here you'll see the base, the shaft, and the Capitol. It's also home to historic commercials, such as Tony the Tiger, Pillsbury Doughboy, and it inspired the jingle, Like a Good Neighbor. Yeah. On your right, you're going to see this beautiful red brick building. That is the Rika Murdoch Center, built in 1914. This is what Chicago used to look like. It was all factories and warehouses, except it was grimy and dirty because it was so polluted with all the smoke. Now, the idea of form followed of prairie architecture, even in that warm, earth-tone colors, that home sweet home vibe where it helps you escape the chaos of the city traffic. And that's exactly what you're witnessing. Now back then, all these warehouses used to have water reservoirs in the top, and they were an eyesore. So architect George Nibbins covered the water reservoir with a huge clock tower. Now next to Rika Murdoch Center, you're gonna see this giant glass tower known as 300 LaSalle. This is one of the most environmental friendly buildings on the planet. It utilizes the location it's at by maximizing daylight. This is the day it opened its door to the world in 1930. It has not stopped serving 20,000 people on a daily. That's because it is now home to the multiple communication network right here. Now you're going to see some giant heads lurking at the very front. They look like heads. That's the Merchandise Mark Hall of Fame. Now when Joseph Kennedy bought this building in 1956 for only $16 million, that's a bargain right there. Now he wanted to give honor to the OGs of retail. He did this by building the Merchandise Mark Hall of Fame. He gave credit to Richard Sears, he gave credit to Frank Lloyd Wright, and many, many more. Now, has anybody seen the TV show on the air? Yeah? Go around to one of the Merchandise Mark and hit up a little shop called Mr. Bean, if you want to check that out. Now, has anybody seen Batman Begins? You know when the bridge is lifted up? That's this bridge right here. And you know Christopher Nolan, he didn't do any CG, he was all about the practical. So just imagine the tumbler jumping from one end to the other. Now we are entering the heart and soul of downtown Chicago, known as Wolf Point. This is where all the branches meet up, the North and South River, but also St. Louis. So that's our nod to St. Louis. But more importantly, do you see all the ventilation underneath, all the fans? Which is a method of insulation back then. But again, leave it to Harry Weiss to start, leave it to Chicago to start a whole new trend. Because when you see these types of buildings, you think of a warehouse, such as a brewery, or a music venue, or loft apartments, right? This is the very first building to start saving all those towers. Now speaking of Harry Weiss, the architect who loves dream homes into reality, he's a big fanatic of sailing. It's similar when you're a kid and you want that bed that looks like a car because you love racing. Well, had the chance to build a cool house, and he did that by building them like sailboats. This right here on your left are river cottages built in 1988. If you ever get the chance to see how they look, it actually looks and feels like in a sailboat with the spiral stair escalators and the spiral stairs and the circle windows. Now you'll notice how all these bridges look the same. These are known as Chicago-style bridges. But to be more technical, they are known as Trunnion bascule bridges. Trunnion bascule bridges. Trunnion being the horse mechanical engine that goes in circles to lift up the block of cement with the mechanism known as bascule, which is French for seesaw. So what it would do is counterbalance the steel bridges, and it would be able to bring it up and down in a matter of 10 minutes or less. Now this achievement was so praised because it was beyond practical and affordable that the country decided to use Chicago decided to just leave it up indefinite. Now rumor has it that supposedly it goes down at 1 or 2 in the morning for maintenance. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I was doing some research at that hour and I came to this bridge at that hour at 2 in the morning. Nothing happened. But I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna keep coming back once in a while and check up on it and see what I can happen. Now, as we are heading south to the South Branch, you'll see the river will then align with Canal Port, which is a historic railroad site. Now, in the 1800s, Chicago was the railroad capital of the world, and it also became the manufacturing center of the country, right? Just about producing anything and everything, from cement, steel, rubber, glue, soap, candy, you name it, everything came from Chicago, right? Stop ahead, called 150 North Riverside, built in 2017. Now, the reason why it looks like a martini glass is because at the very base, there's not a lot of room for a solid foundation. At the front, it has to have 30 feet of public access to the river, not to mention it's built underneath the Amtrak train tracks and next to the CTA, not to mention it's built on the This is one of the first buildings in the whole city to start to harmonize with the location. In this situation, it's the river. Now, who's seen Ferris Bueller Day Off? You know that scene where the dad makes the phone call to Ferris to make some chicken soup to feel better? If you look at the very center, you can just imagine him making that phone call. That's the tower where he worked. Underneath the bridge, go ahead and look up. Well, who wants to build in front of a sewer, basically, right? And so up ahead, we're going to see a building to do so many radical ideas to transform the city into what it is. Now, as I mentioned before about the air rights situation, not a lot of buildings were being built on the train tracks because it was difficult. Just to give you some perspective, imagine moving into a beautiful apartment in downtown wherever you're at, and the landlord permanently drilled the Christmas train tracks on the ground. Now, if you stepped on this, you'd be a major fee, right? And that's what architects had to deal with, which is why they didn't really build much on the river. Now, as I mentioned, the river was a sewer, so a lot of people had their favorite sewer on the river. And the building that's coming up very soon on your right did something radical. They introduced a river plaza so that people can enjoy the view. So you can go out there for lunch, drink your coffee, your tea, and eat your sandwich, right? Many people thought that this was very radical. Why would you put a beautiful plaza in front of the river, which was a sewer, right? Well, they took a leap of faith because without the bravery, in 1997, it only took like 100 years later, the city of Chicago now put a new ordinance that any buildings built on the river must have 30 feet of public access. And it's something we're very grateful for. Now, on your right, you're going to see 2 North Riverside Plaza, one of the first buildings to ever go and take on the air rights challenge to build around and above the train tracks. You'll notice how it's decked out in this beautiful art deco aesthetic. Now, this was built in 1930. Now, you'll notice how it looks like a temple to Egypt, right? Ancient Egypt. And that's because during the 1920s, Egyptolania was all the hype with the how it's golden too. Resonating well with Art Deco, which is power, right? All of that you see is just a stone curtain. It doesn't serve a purpose other than just aesthetics. And ironically, it led to the downfall of our economy. Next thing you know, the Great Depression happened, and we go straight into World War II. And for about 20 years, nothing was being just a stone curtain. It means building a good building, not a beautiful building, a good building. And structures. And that's exactly what you're going to witness right here on your right with Gateway Centers 1, built in 1965, and Gateway Center 2, built in 1968. And this was all fuel to the flame. There was no raindrop, everything was primarily filled with wood. The blaze raged for 30 hours, spanning a mile-long radius and 4 miles wide. Immediately the next day after the flames, dying out to the early morning rains of October 10th, as Chicagoans were walking the town of ashes, it was understandable for them to leave. They didn't want to go, and the only place they could go was up. And in this process, it also led to the first fire building, made of concrete and steel. Speaking of Chicago hot dogs, if you want to have a beautiful summer magical moment, come out to this beautiful Riverwalk, get a Chicago hot dog to go, get an RC Cola, or if you really want to experience the world's food, get a pizza, and just come out to this beautiful golden hour, especially when the sun is going behind the skyscrapers, creating an orange glow, and the moon, she is rising over the lake, creating a violet aura. Stars begin to twinkle as these skyscrapers begin to wake up with the city bright lights. You then understand why Chicagoans put up with this winter. It's because of that feeling of romance. And that's exactly what Daniel Burnham wanted to do. He wanted to put a Paris on the prairie. That city beautiful movement. If the city is beautiful, then the people will be beautiful, and thus beautiful things will happen. I truly recommend you come out here for a Millennium Park concert, Lollapalooza, or NASCAR racing. It's such a spectacle, you really believe you're in some other world. Now, the Riverwalk right here, I'm glad that it opened in 2016. For many, many centuries, it was neglected, which is the constant stream of hypocrisy. And in 2016, the city of Chicago decided to add this beautiful mile-and-a-half Riverwalk for the public. It is free and open all year long. And right here, you're going to see a box full of projectors. They actually shine on merchandise market every night, starting from here till New Year's Eve. They shine on all the pillars, the limestone pillars, to create motion picture synced in with sound, and it is called Art on the Mark. It is free and open to the public. I highly recommend you check it out. Art on the Mark. Definitely, there's more activities to check out here as well. There's the McCormick Bridge Museum. If you want to see what it looks like inside these bridges, you can go in there for free, as well as the Vietnam Memorial Plaza, with many, many bars and restaurants. It is free. I definitely recommend you all come out here. And with the wind and the sunlight, it creates a reflection like if the river is actually flowing. It's hard to see it now, but I kid you not, if you're on the other side, you'll see it. It's really cool. Now next door to 111, you're going to see a shiny Greek temple known as 77 Whacker. This is built in 1992. It is the only building designed and built by an outside team that's not from Chicago, specifically from Spain, or Now you'll notice how it's decked out in this beautiful ancient Greek temple aesthetics, but also with modern amenities. This style is known as neoclassic. Now up ahead on your right, you're gonna see a giant, like a green tower, green terracotta tower, actual 24 karat gold on the top. Now, when this was built, this is the Carbide and Carbide building, built in 1930, but during this time period, it was Prohibition era. It was illegal to sell and consume alcohol. And architects are artists at heart. And they wanted to respond to that movement by building a giant tower that resembles a champagne bottle. Can't see it now, but it's there. Now, this is an interesting fact because before any of these skyscrapers are here, you get a perfect bird's eye view from the former Central Post Office. And in that office was also the Federal Bureau of Prohibition. So I wonder when they had pouring coffee and saw this giant bottle of champagne, what was going on with their eyes? research, and I can tell you, it's a beautiful Art Deco elevator that looks like you're in the Great Gatsby. Take it to the top and go and get yourself a nice glass of champagne. And if that's not your thing, they also have a flight of abstinence. Again, I've done the research, you can trust me on that. Now on your left, you can see this tall, dark building known as the AB Plaza, formerly known as the Auditorium Tower. Now this right here is Mee's last masterpiece to the world. Here you can truly understand what less is more is all about, glass and steel. He really did believe in building good buildings that could connect to the infinite possibilities. Now up ahead, you're going to see the Mather Tower, built in 1927. It's right here is the neo-Gothic style. It's meant to reminisce the Victorian age. It was completely repurposed. It's a busy boutique hotel. Now, all this talk about the World's Fair in the White City, if you want to know what it actually looked like, the London House is a great representation of liberal arts. Now, I highly recommend you come out here later tonight and go to the roof tower because you get a beautiful city view of the sunset or the sunrises, depending on the time. Now, it is free. You don't need a reservation. Over the river, across the bridge, you're going to eventually see a French Gothic tower known as the Tribune Tower. Now, the Tribune Tower, as it was being constructed, there was an open competition to architects and engineers from all over the world on who could truly build the most beautiful office space. What won was an inspiration that came from the painting of Monet, with a cathedral in the middle of a field. And what you get is this beautiful French Gothic revival tower, known as the Tribune Tower, built in 1925. Can you believe it's over 100 years at this point now? And many of these skyscrapers have definitely stood the test of time. Now I recommend you check out the base of the Tribune Tower, as it is decked out with 150 fragments of time. You'll see historical elements of the Great Wall of China, Taj Mahal, the Pyramid of Giza, as well as the Alamo and many, many more. Now walk closer towards Michigan Avenue, and you'll see a handsome bust of Du Sable. That's because this was his historic trading post, where he would trade for spices and goods, and communicate in English, French, Spanish, and various indigenous dialects. He was indeed the very first in Chicago. Today, his post has been converted to the Apple Store. Tower, built in 1989 by Adrian Smith. Adrian Smith, who also gave you the Trump Tower as well as the Burj Khalifa. Now, when he had the opportunity to build his very first skyscraper here in Chicago, he wanted to give a love letter to the original buildings that stood here, such as the Mather, the London, Wrigley, the Tribune. Now, when you look at this building, you may think it's from the 1920s and 30s. It does have the aesthetics of Art Deco, and you wouldn't be wrong. But this right here is known as Eco Deco, giving the aesthetics of the golden age of architecture, known as Art Deco, with the aesthetics of modernism. Now on your right, you're going to see a tall white tower. That's going to be the Aeon building, formerly known as the Standard Oil. This is the fourth tallest skyscraper here in Chicago, and it was built twice. Originally, it was made of fine Italian marble, and it cost about $120 million to make. But fine Italian marble could not withstand the Chicago elements, and pieces were starting to fall to the ground, creating a major safety hazard. So they completely stripped out all of the fine Italian marble and put granite instead, which cost another $80 million, making this tower a grand total of 200. Now you'll notice how we're going against the stream here in Chicago, the river, and typically anywhere in the world that wouldn't be the case, as many rivers and streams flow naturally into lakes and oceans. And that was the case here in Chicago. However, this river was indeed a sewer, and all the trash and filth and hazmat materials would all flow into the lake, which we then pumped back into our houses for drinking water. And it was full of E. coli, killing all Chicagoans and the masses. Now today, there's no cure for E. coli, so imagine the situation back in the 1800s. It was very disastrous. So the city of Chicago hired an engineer from Boston known as Sylvester Chesbrough. Now when he came to Chicago, he realized not too far west from here is a subcontinental divide line, basically the highest point in land. You can't see it because it's already flat to begin with, but basically when rain drops left, it naturally flows into the Mississippi River. And when rain drops to the east, it naturally flows into Lake Michigan. So he thought maybe we could dig a ditch deeper than the lake, maybe gravity could do all the heavy lifting. And after 8 years of digging, shoveling, and using bombs, and 20 miles later, the city of Chicago was able to successfully reverse the flow of the river, and all of our trash and filth flowed west to St. Louis. And they did not like it one bit. In fact, the city of St. Louis took us to the Supreme Court and tried to sue us. They were telling the judge, hey judge, Chicago's contaminating our water. Unfortunately, they could not come up with enough evidence, and Chicago being Chicago when it comes to German politics, they told the judge, for real, you know, like people are dying in the masses. The solution to pollution is dilution. And with that, we won the case. And now you know why Chicago and St. Louis don't get along. It's not because of the Cubs and Cardinals, but it's because of the river. And that beautiful fountain you're seeing is actually to commemorate the historical event that all took place. Now, at every hour at the top, it does stream in arch into the river. And if you wonder what kind of water they're using, they're actually using the river water. So if you want to go through, feel free. Now, up ahead, you're going to see a beautiful, tall flask or fidget spinner, very curvaceous. I think it looks like a classic. It's kind of hard to unsee now. But that's going to be known as Lake Point Tower. It is the only building eastmost of Lakeshore Drive. And there's a reason for that. Have you ever gone to a beautiful resort on the ocean, lake, whatever, and you're trying to get a good vista of the water, but you can't because you got these tall towers blocking the view of hotel resorts? Well, when Chicago was first incorporated back in the 1830s, the OG commissioners were like, hey, this is a really beautiful lakefront. It should be free and clear to the public, free and clear of obstruction, and free and clear of buildings. It should be open to the public and to the visitors. And that was the golden rule, but it was never the law. And when this building was going up in 1968, the city of Chicago was like, hey, that's not cool. So they needed to close that golden rule and made it into law, thus making it the only building eastmost of Lakeshore Drive. Can you imagine if the whole city on the east side had buildings blocking the view of the water? It'd be a whole different city. It'd be a whole different tour. Now, as we are going towards Lakeshore Drive, on your left, you're going to see Navy Pier with the giant Ferris wheel as we go through the bridge. Now, originally it was called Municipal Pier. It was meant to honor the plan of 1909 by Daniel Burnham. Originally he wanted to give you 2 piers, but because of time and money, the city of Chicago decided to just make it into 1 pier instead. And what you get is Municipal Pier, built in 1916. Now, it was later renamed to Navy Pier to honor our World War I veterans. And after World War I, it became a training facility for World War II. And after the Great War, it became the University